As far back as anyone can remember, Josie Duggar has been one of the most outgoing and intelligent Duggar girls. Originating from a big living in a loving home where she received plenty of attention and care from her siblings who were quite close despite their age and character differences. Laughter, conversation, and the continual buzz of activity permeated the Arkansas home of the family. Josie had always been perfectly at home in this lively setting, whether it was for homework, chores, parties, or family dinners. In times of sibling rivalry, her infectious laughter and boundless energy would often mediate a peaceful resolution. Her parents, Jim, Bob, and Michelle, and the oldest siblings were very proud of her because of her sharp mind, quick wit, and capacity to care profoundly about people in her life. But under the surface, small changes started to form, and at first they were virtually hard to notice. It became clear that Josie was acting in an abnormal manner. She started to retreat from family activities, which was a change from her previous extroverted and perpetually joyful self. The more time she spent alone in her room, the more secretive she became about her everyday activities. When the family first saw these changes, they thought it was just normal teenage moodiness. Minor behavioral changes were to be expected as one navigated the frequently difficult transition from childhood to adolescence. However, the subtle changes became more noticeable as time went on. Fatigue and emotional distancing gradually supplanted her once limitless vitality. Her eyes would hold a sadness that no one in the family had ever seen before, and she would frequently stare blankly at the ceiling or walls for long periods of time, as if lost in thought. Laughter, which she used to bring to every family meeting, suddenly disappeared. When she did talk, it was usually with a quiet demeanor, missing the vivacity and excitement for which she was famous. Josie started to feel less invested in her schoolwork, which had previously brought her much joy. Her teachers began to contact her parents with worries since she was turning in unfinished assignments and missing deadlines. Thinking their daughter only needed comfort and guidance, Jim, Bob, and Michelle first blamed academic expectations and stress for their daughter's problems. It became apparent, though, that something else was going on. Months passed, and Josie's seclusion became increasingly apparent. Her absence and the little changes in her temperament were noticed by her siblings, who were used to her participation in games, conversations, and group projects. The family's level of concern increased over time. A profound discomfort began to grip Michelle in particular. Her formerly regimented personal care practices had grown haphazard, and she saw that Josie frequently skipped or ate her meals alone. Just as worried as he was, Jim Bob saw that his daughter always seemed exhausted. She slouched, and her looks were distant, as if a fog had descended across her normally lively personality. They didn't bring up the problem until a peaceful night at home. Michelle found some strange and unsettling empty containers while she was cleaning up Joe's room. With her heart racing, she showed them to Jim Bob, who was overcome with a range of emotions: fear, rage, and a sense of powerlessness. At that same moment, the weight of the realization was something neither parent had bargained for. Josie, their brilliant and loving daughter, was battling an addiction. It hurt like hell to think that she had been keeping this secret from them for weeks, if not months. But the Duggars kept their family values in mind as they dealt with the crisis, even in the mid of their horror and terror. They understood that retaliation or harshness would not help their daughter recover. They have trust. They know that kindness can change the world, and they know that they proceeded with the guidance of their family. They came to the conclusion that it was critical to approach Josie head-on with empathy, compassion, and love. It wasn't a confrontation in the conventional sense. When they finally spoke to her, the talk was all about being vulnerable, being honest, and gently caring for one another. They informed her of their observations, voiced their concern, and most importantly, helped her feel less alone. At first, Josie was defensive and ashamed, and then she felt the crushing burden of guilt and humiliation. It was a tense and silent moment, but she eventually started to talk about her problems, the pressure she was under, and the time she had turned to drugs for comfort. With empathy and understanding, the family listened without passing judgment. Every sibling made a unique contribution: messages of support, assurances of friendship, and affirmations of Joe's unconditional love. Having a deep understanding of the complexities of addiction, Jim, Bob, and Michelle clarified that this was more of a psychological and physical problem than a moral failure. They assured Josie that getting therapy would not make her less valuable or unwelcome in the family, and stressed the importance of professional help. The group finally settled on a course of action. After hours of heated debate, Josie would enroll in a rehabilitation program tailored to her unique psychological and physiological needs. The parents felt a mix of relief and fear. As they made the decision, they felt a sense of relief, as they were finally doing something concrete to assist their daughter. Nervousness because they anticipated a difficult journey ahead, rife with unknowns and emotional upheaval. As her departure drew near, the family worked to make her last days as comfortable as possible. They made the most of their extra time together, bonding through shared experiences, laughter, and silence. The love and faith that each sibling had in Josie's strength were shown through notes, handmade gifts, and other little gestures. To make sure Joe had a smooth transition into rehabilitation and was surrounded by competent, caring caretakers, Michelle and Jim Bob diligently worked with medical professionals. Despite her fears, Josie felt a newfound hope. Going to treatment was more than just being sober. It was about getting her life back on track, mending fences with loved ones and oneself, and discovering how to face adversity without compromising who she is. The arduous path that lay ahead was something she was well aware of, but she didn't know how much of a foundation of strength she needed until her family's unfailing love gave it to her. This revelation had far-reaching consequences. Even within the family, everyone had to face their own limitations, anxieties, and preconceptions. Siblings considered how their interactions, despite their best intentions, might have unintentionally added to her sense of loneliness. Jim, Bob, and Michelle reevaluated their parenting styles after realizing that even in a loving home, a child's mental and emotional health can be greatly impacted by subtle demands and expectations. The role of close friends and extended family members was crucial as well, providing prayers, advice, and support. In times of need, the Duggars turned to their close-knit community for comfort and strength. The value of honest dialogue, understanding, and taking the initiative shone through. In these instances, a solemn ceremony of sorts commemorated Josie's departure to recovery. Nothing flashy, just genuine hugs, words of encouragement spoken softly, and a vow to keep in touch by phone calls, letters, and in-person visits. The atmosphere was heavy with both sadness and optimism. As she departed from home, I hoped that she would find healing, progress, and self-discovery despite my sadness for the hardships she had gone through and the distance she had been separated from her immediate family. Part 1 of this narrative is full with worry and emotion, but it sets the stage for Part 2, which is about overcoming adversity, finding love at home, and the life-changing effects of community. The unfaltering support of her loved ones led Josie Duggar, who had previously shrouded herself in struggle and silence, onto a road that offered regeneration. It was too much for Josie to handle in her first few days at the rehab. Anxiety set in the moment she stepped foot in the cold, clinical space. She had no idea what to expect from the regimented schedule, and there were complete strangers about, all of whom seemed well-intentioned but completely alien. Every inch of the institution served as a constant reminder that she had departed from the comfort of her family home and into a place solely dedicated to facing her darkest secrets. Discipline and structure were intended to be instilled via the rigorous yet necessary practices. At the outset each day, including meditation, group therapy, guided therapy, meal planning, and mornings. There were a lot of activities every day that helped with healing, focusing, and emotional intelligence. At first, Josie found it difficult to adjust. She hadn't anticipated how severe the withdrawal symptoms would be. Perseverance was put to the test by exhaustion, impatience, and times of hopelessness. The combination of the detox and the new physical routines made for a rough night's sleep. Her judgment was impaired by mental fog, making even the smallest tasks feel monumental. For a long time, she regretted being here and wondered if she could make it through the program. However, amidst the challenges, minor triumphs started to materialize. She didn't pass out during her morning workouts on the first day. On the first night, she slept for the majority of her rest period, and the moment she honestly voiced her feelings in group therapy, she gained a fragile sense of hope with each minor accomplishment. In helping Josie through this change, medical experts and therapists were crucial. They patiently explained to her that addiction was the result of a web of interrelated mental, emotional, and physical issues and not a reflection of her moral character. They assisted her in identifying situations that set off her episodes, gaining insight into her feelings, and learning non-substance coping mechanisms. With time, she was able to recognize trends in her behavior, pinpoint her weak spots, and develop strategies to overcome them. Instead of being seen as a form of punishment, breathing exercises, journaling, meditation, and organized social contacts were used as instruments to empower. The unfaltering love and encouragement of her loved ones changed her rehabilitation journey for the better. With frequent phone calls, encouraging texts, and scheduled visits whenever feasible, Michelle and Jim Bob stayed in continual communication. In their own special ways, the siblings shared their care and affection. Some people penned letters that were full of affirmations and memories. Those around her tried to brighten her spirits by sharing works of art or modest gifts. In spite of her uncertainties and fears, Josie knew that her family's love will always be there for her. Because of this unbroken connection, Josie started to feel little but noticeable changes in her outlook. As the days progressed into weeks, she became more self-aware of her challenges and more certain that she could triumph over them. Through group therapy, she was able to meet others going through the same things she was, which helped her gain perspective, which in turn increased her empathy, solidarity, and shared resilience. She felt less shame and isolation after hearing other people's stories of struggle and recovery, which helped normalize her own experiences. Individual accountability and introspection were also tenets of the rehabilitation method. The help and attitude changes that Josie had didn't just come from overcoming her physical dependence, but also from confronting the emotional and psychological patterns that played a role in her addiction. Every day, she would write in her journal about her hopes, dreams, fears, and regrets. In the midst of facing unpleasant realities, she was able to envision a healthier, more empowered version of herself, which made the experience all the more liberating. Her motivation was greatly influenced by family updates. The messages she received from her parents and siblings reminded her that she was not alone on her journey to recovery, but rather part of a community where even the smallest triumphs were celebrated. Michelle constantly reassured her that failure was normal and should not be used as an excuse to be hard on herself. Growth, like healing, necessitated time and persistent effort. Jim Bob emphasized this point, encouraging patience. Josie learned through these encounters that she was valuable and deserving of kindness, tolerance, and understanding. By the time her program had reached its halfway point, Josie had accomplished a lot. Her circadian rhythm started to settle down. She learned to manage her emotions in therapy and showed signs of growing self-awareness. Physical exercises that had previously been draining boosted her sense of accomplishment and self-efficacy.